Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy, Nerd Mode On, and welcome to episode 14 of Battle Tested, a video series where I take user-submitted loadouts and check and see if they'd be viable on the battlefield. So for today's submission, I actually have one from myself, and I figured this would be a great opportunity to lend a helping hand to those newer players, especially that are trying to re-innovate with some of their classes. This can also be extended to the Battlefield veterans that have been playing for multiple different years, for multiple different games, and of course I really like to have the opportunity to express some newer weapons that maybe you guys don't normally use, considering that a lot of the players usually use the best weapons in Battlefield 4. So with that kind of talked about, the primary weapon that we're going to be using today is the M16A4 with the red dot sight. The secondary weapon is going to be the Deagle 44 with the red dot sight, the green laser sight, as well as the heavy barrel. Gadget 1 is going to be the M320HE. Gadget 2 is going to be the medical bag. The grenade type is going to be the M67 frag grenade. The knife is going to be the seal. And last but not least, the field upgrade path is going to be Grenadier. So starting things off, let's talk a little bit about the M16A4 and the benefits that it brings to the battlefield. The M16A4 does have a rounds per minute clocking in at 800 rounds per minute, which actually does make it a very high rounds per minute in comparison to a lot of its competitors within the assault rifle category. It is also worth noting that the M16A4 does have a velocity clocking in at 650 meters per second, which does make it the second fastest velocity in the assault rifle category. So one of the benefits of having a high velocity for the assault rifles in Battlefield 4 is that it decreases the amount of compensation you have to do for long range or moving targets. Now transferring over to the damage model, you guys will notice that the M16A4 does have a maximum damage of 24.5 damage up until 12.5 meters. Now after 12.5 meters, your overall damage is going to start to decline, and the minimum damage that this weapon can do is 18 damage, and that is achieved at 60 meters. Now moving right along to the reload information, of course the M16A4 does have a short reload clocking in at 1.8 seconds, which does make it the fastest short reload in the assault rifle category. Now what's also really interesting about this is that it does have a long reload clocking in at 2.37 seconds, which again does make it the fastest long reload in the assault rifle category, so ultimately you do have the quickest reloading weapon of all the assault rifles. Now it is worth noting that the M16A4 in Battlefield 4 unfortunately does not have a fully automatic mode. And as a due result, you only have the ability to fire the weapon in burst fire. However, you do have a very good benefit, especially when it comes down to aiming down sight accuracy, clocking in at 0.2. So ultimately, all this really means is that the M16A4 is going to be more accurate while aiming down sight, and of course, for a majority of the weapons that you guys use, I'm sure a lot of you guys do use the weapon in an aiming down sight mode, considering that it does give you accuracy bonuses. So now that we've kind of talked about the M16A4 and the statistics that it offers and some of the hidden benefits that this particular weapon brings to the Battlefield franchise, it is also worth noting that the M16A4 is a very powerful weapon and is definitely a force to be reckoned with when it comes down to the battlefield. This particular weapon is going to work really well with players that are very well rounded when it comes down to pushing on objectives, as well as just being very strategical about how they go about doing so. Unfortunately, the M16 is not like an AEK. It does not have the rounds per minute to give you the advantage when it comes down to close quarters combat. However, this particular weapon has been allocated to the medium and long range category, and as a due result, your ability to kill players at range is a lot greater than it would be if you were to find yourself in close quarters combat. Now, of course, if we take just a moment to look at the physical attraction of the M16A4, it's a very iconic weapon, and I'm sure many of you guys are very familiar with the M16A4, considering that it finds itself in a large majority of video games that are released on a yearly basis. Now, since the M16A4 has been a weapon that the military has been using for quite some time, it's seen multiple different deployments, especially when it comes down to our armed forces. It's definitely very interesting to see how the M16A4 performs when it comes down to a video game, considering that it does have alterations every single year, with the newer editions of Battlefield coming out every 2 to 3 years. So of course, with that said, if we take a look back to Battlefield 3, the M16A4 was also in Battlefield 3, as well as the M16A3, which was its fully automatic counterpart. Now in Battlefield 3, a large majority of the players that you would find using the M16 would be using the M16A3, considering that this particular variant was fully automatic and it was well rounded for all situations that a single player might find himself in. However, with that said, the M16A3 unfortunately did not find itself into Battlefield 4, considering that the community gave such a negative response to this particular weapon, and it was very overpowered in multiple different situations, as I'm sure you guys have figured out. But with that said, a couple of years ago, a particular DICE employee did hint that the M16A3 might be coming in a weapons crate for Battlefield 4, but unfortunately this never did come to tuition, which is really unfortunate considering that I was watering at the mouth for the opportunity to use one of my favorite weapons in Battlefield 3, but I do completely understand why this weapon was never fully released for Battlefield 4. The M16A4 in Battlefield 4 is a very well-rounded weapon, and I feel like it's a very well-balanced weapon as a due result of the fears of the M16A3 from Battlefield 3. However, that does not mean that the M16A4 is one of the best weapons in Battlefield 4. There are a large majority of other assault rifles that do this particular job, especially when it comes down to medium and long range, a lot better than this particular weapon. But I was pleasantly surprised by the performance of this weapon, and ultimately when it comes down to it, it's a very interesting weapon to use. Of course, it does have the hidden benefits of being 3-round bursts, which will decrease the amount of ammunition that you do end up wasting on the battlefield. And as a result, this does have the ability to train you to be a lot more accurate and take a couple of more milliseconds to acquire your target, and not just necessarily rely on the random number generators that the Battlefield franchise is known for, especially when it comes down to the random spread. So when it really comes down to it, if you're a player that still wants to be very competitive on the battlefield, but you would like to deviate from some of the very powerful weapons of the assault rifle category, I feel like this would be a great option for you to try, especially since it does maintain performance and doesn't necessarily hinder your overall skill level when it comes down to acquiring targets. But anyway guys, that's really all the information I have for you. I hope you found something in the video insightful, or it gave you some additional information to make a better decision about how you would like to use the M16A4 in the future. As well, if you guys would like to recommend a loadout for future episodes, feel free to let me know in the comments below using a similar format as myself. But until the next episode guys, this has been NMO, and I'm going to be signing out guys. Peace!